Coming up on Jerusalem Dateline, religious freedom under assault, with a new report outlining an increased crackdown from totalitarian regimes. Plus, why does Israel have 2 independence days? And what's going on with the military buildup outside Israel's borders? We'll also hear from one young woman who faced down brutality and death threats in one of Iran's most notorious prisons. All this and more coming up on this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. A new report on global religious freedom says persecution is rising against people of faith, ranging from state-sponsored discrimination to imprisonment and even death. The annual report by the bipartisan U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom focuses on the world's worst offenders: Myanmar, China, Iran, North Korea, and Saudi Arabia among the 12 nations already on the list. This year, 5 new countries were added: Afghanistan, India, Nigeria, Syria, and Vietnam. Rabbi Abraham Cooper tells CBN News that while persecution is increasing around the world, it's harshest on people living in totalitarian regimes.
Religion is under assault. Religious freedom is something that is denied by many governments. God is the number one enemy. Religious belief is the number one enemy in any system that demands a total fealty to the dictators and the regimes that are there.
The report includes recommended actions the White House and Congress can take to address religious freedom violations. Commissioners believe every country named in the report is watching to see how the U.S. will respond. Well, Israel just celebrated its Independence Day last week, but Independence Day events are also coming up this month. Paul Strand, who recently joined our Jerusalem team from the U.S., asked John Wagi, our Middle East analyst, and me about that and a few other things. Take a look.
So guys, we just celebrated Independence Day last week in April, but on the calendar there's May 14th, another Independence Day. What's with 2 Independence Days in Israel?
Well, Paul, great to be with you. First of all, one is on the Hebrew calendar. That's why they celebrate it on April 26th. The Gregorian calendar will be marked on May 14th. Regardless of what day it is, though, Paul, it's a miracle. 75 years of the modern state of Israel after being separated for 2,000 years from the homeland, and to celebrate 75 years is remarkable and a miracle.
Okay, now the United Nations in November passed this resolution to mark Nakba, the Nakba, on May 15th, the day after Israeli Independence Day. What is the Nakba and what's the significance of that date?
Well, Nakba in Arabic means catastrophe, so it's the day of catastrophe, which Yasser Arafat began the commemoration of it in 1998. That's all the older it is. Before that, some even say that the word Nakba was referring to the Syrians and the Arab refusal to take on the Israelis and defeat them. So the real catastrophe back in '48 was that the Arabs didn't win. Then it became a catastrophe that the Israelis did this to us, you know. So that is the day that's commemorated and now celebrated by the United Nations.
Okay, and so what the Palestinians are saying is this is the day we lost this land. Is basically what they're saying. That's what the disaster is.
We were forced out and lost the land.
Okay. Anything else on that, Chris?
No, that's...
No? Okay. Here in Israel, right into last year, we've been seeing these demonstrations over and over again, hundreds of thousands of people protesting Benjamin Netanyahu's judicial reform legislation. But last week, we saw a big, huge demonstration of maybe more than 500,000 for the judicial reform legislation. What's the significance of, do you think, of this latest protest?
Well, I would think it was very significant because for 4 months, there really hadn't been that kind of demonstration on behalf of judicial reform. There have been 4 months of tens of thousands, if not more than 100,000 in Tel Aviv, in other cities around the country. So I think this was speaking for maybe a silent majority here in Israel, that they came out for this judicial reform and probably wanted to even the playing field about how many Israelis are for it or against it.
John, what do you think? You think it was a big deal that there were that many people out for it?
I do think it's a big deal. I think it bought the government more time. And first of all, I'm not even sure when they're going to be able to bring up judicial reform, because they've got to pass a budget first and that kind of thing. But what it did was say, look, there is a sizable number of people, the ones who voted for us last November, who still care about the issue of judicial reform.
Okay, another topic completely, which is that, Chris, you've been observing the military buildup going on in Lebanon, basically an anti-Israeli military buildup. Rockets pouring in from Gaza, rockets coming in from Lebanon, terrorist attacks here in Israel. Do you think an all-out war is imminent?
It's possible. I don't know if it's imminent, but I think the last few weeks when we saw rockets from Lebanon, Syria, and the Gaza Strip may have been a prelude to what Iran wants to do. They want to overwhelm Israel's air defenses, the Iron Dome in particular, with thousands or hundreds of rockets from all of these areas. And I think because of the judicial reform as well, it ties into what's going on in Iran. I think Iran sees weakness within Israel, and they may be misjudging the whole idea, but I think that could be a prelude of what we might see. Whether or not it's imminent, we'll see. I would just add Isaiah62fast.com. People are going to be praying for Israel because of the judicial reform issue and the Iran threat. So I think that's something we need to consider and evaluate.
John, I've noticed that there's this talk about the U.S., a bunch of the military ammunition and stuff that's stored, mostly for Israel in case there's a war, is going to go over to Ukraine. Do you think that this is a problem, that all of a sudden Israel might be in a situation where it just run out of ammunition?
I think that it is a problem, the U.S. commitment to Israel militarily. They make the verbal commitments all the time, but the actual physical commitment to prolong a conflict, because a conflict that breaks out isn't just going to end in one day, you know. So Israel has to be concerned about that. And also a defense minister this week from the Defense Ministry of Israel said that it's almost inevitable that there will be an escalation of some sort this year with the kinds of rocket fire we just saw in the last few days.
Okay. Well, thank you, Chris, John, and along with the crows out here in the park, thank you very much.
Great to be with you, Paul.
Thanks.
Up next, building bridges in the halls of Israel's government. How Christians and Jews are uniting in the Knesset. This week, members of Israel's Knesset and Christian leaders representing Christians around the world met in Israel's parliament. This historic collaboration is having an impact in nations around the world. Now in its 19th year, the Knesset Christian Allies Caucus came together to celebrate Israel's diamond anniversary.
The significance of the relaunch of the Knesset Christian Allies Caucus is that we've all come together to celebrate 75 years in Israel. The caucus basically runs year-round, but once a year we always come together and discuss what are the issues that are important to us and how we can better work together to promote what we call faith-based diplomacy.
Executive Director Josh Reinstein says faith-based diplomacy is a powerful tool for defending the Jewish state.
Faith-based diplomacy is when people who believe in the Bible get involved in the political process, when they take their biblical support and turn it into real political action. Today, faith-based diplomacy is the most important weapon that Israel has in its diplomatic arsenal. It's the reason there are embassies in Jerusalem again. It's the reason there's anti-BDS legislation around the world. It's the reason we have observer status in the African Union. It's because Christians are getting involved with the political process and letting their representatives know that standing with Israel is a priority.
Knesset member Sharon Haskell, one of the co-chairs of the caucus, feels this Jewish-Christian collaboration is extremely important.
The Christian communities around the world are our greatest allies. They are bringing out to the world the message, the truth about Israel. We live today in a world where it's so easy to spread propaganda and lies through social media, sometimes even mainstream media. And so when they are so dedicated in coming here, seeing here, being active in anything that happens here in the Holy Land, and they see the reality where Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. It's a democracy, a stable one that brings the message of freedom and equality and rights to its citizens, all of its citizens, then they can combat this propaganda and these lies.
The Israel Allies Caucus has more than 50 caucuses and parliaments around the world with 1,200 legislators. The largest caucus is in the U.S. Congress on Capitol Hill in Washington. Weinstein says these men and women are making a difference, such as in the move of the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem.
It was a faith-based initiative. It took 14 years to occur, but it only happened once Christians made it a priority. Also, what we've seen is in different places around the world, we're seeing legislation, resolutions, hearings on a number of different agenda items, and these are all being pushed from Christians. When you look at the success that Israel has diplomatically around the world, 90% of it has come through faith-based diplomacy. So it's really astounding the success of this new movement.
Jürgen Buehler, director of the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem, sees the collaboration as historic.
For the first time, Jews and Christians are collaborating to work together on behalf of Israel, but also there are a lot of subjects emerging right now that might even affect other nations, that will be for the blessing of other nations. So it's a historic time where for the first time in 2,000 years, Jews and Christians are working together, collaborating to bring a blessing to the whole world.
The ICEJ is working with the Caucus in Europe.
3 or 4 of our branches in Europe are partnering with the Caucus to change the labeling law. The European Union is labeling all the products that come from the West Bank. You have to know only Jewish products, not Palestinian or Arab products. So in a way, it's a déjà vu what happened 75, 80 years ago in Germany, where Jewish products were labeled in a very bad way. And we want to make sure together with the Caucus that this will not repeat itself.
Earl Cox, a longtime Christian Zionist, has seen this collaboration growing for years.
I'm usually here about 5 months out of the year. And when I come, I see so much happening here that just excites me so much. The Christians, evangelical Christians, are supporting the state of Israel. As you very well know, 0.2%, if I'm not mistaken, you put all the Jews together in the world. That's all it is. But if you look at us who are in the evangelical community, there are hundreds of millions of us. And that's why it's so important that we stand with the state of Israel right now, not tomorrow, but right now.
During the meeting, many Knesset members came to thank the Christian leaders.
We don't and we cannot take for granted the incredible support that we receive from this community. Every time I meet Christian supporters from around the world, it expands my heart, really, in understanding to what extent they are dedicated in helping and defending us. What an incredible bond we have between those two communities.
Coming up, trapped in an Iranian prison cell and sentenced to death by hanging. Her crime? Choosing to follow Jesus. Hear this woman's harrowing story of persecution and freedom when we come back. Earlier in the program, we discussed the fight for international religious freedom. Few know the cost of following Christ like our next guest, Marzi Amirzadeh. We want to show you an excerpt from her remarkable story. After giving her heart to Jesus, she and a friend began secretly distributing Bibles in Iran, which got them arrested. And what happened after you're arrested?
Yeah, the first place that they sent us was at a detention center, the same jail that Mahsa Amini, the Kurdish girl, was beaten to the near death, and she passed away as a result of that. There is no air, no light, and they throw food at you. We had to sleep on a cold concrete floor, cover ourselves with wet blankets that were soaked in urine. And they usually keep prisoners in that specific jail for maximum 2-3 days. And after that, it would be decided if they go to a court or get released. But for us, they kept us for 10 days intentionally because they wanted to put more pressure on us because of our faith. And that was the reason, because the first court that we had, the way that I talked to the judge, he didn't like it, and I challenged him because he said, you were Muslims converted to Christianity, and you are infidel, you are dirty, you need to be executed by hanging. And I said, I never consider myself a Muslim, because everyone who born in this country, they have to be a Muslim. There is no choice. So you can't tell me that I was a Muslim converted. And beside that, if you truly believe that we are criminal, and go ahead and execute us, and why don't you show it in the national TV for people to know that this is a big crime? And he got mad at me and he said, I will make sure to push your case for execution by hanging. And he did that, actually. and later they sentenced us to death by hanging. But praise God, I believe that was God's purpose for us to stay in the first jail, because we had at the first few days we were just praying to get released because we didn't want to be in that horrible place. But later we could see how many women are getting arrested. They were sending them there, and we found it an opportunity to share our faith with those hopeless women. And it was like a church. Every time they would open the cell doors, we would gather in one cell, and we would just pray for them, talk about Jesus, and we really enjoyed that.
Wow, that's amazing. So instead of a jail, you had church.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And later they sent us to Evin prison, which is notorious and very infamous prison in Iran. I saw many human rights violations. I was a witness to the beating of prisoners in front of my eyes. And execution, as I mentioned, that was horrible experience. I remember the last month, they just told us, we had many interrogations. I forgot to mention, they sent us to another section in Evin prison. It's called 209 section. In that section, they put pressure on us, especially the last month, and told us, if you just write one sentence and renouncing your faith in Christ, we will release you. But I told them, hey, go ahead and hang me. I'm not going to renounce my faith, because I didn't come to faith just because one day I woke up and I decided to be a Christian. Many miracles happened, many dreams that God showed his face to me. And as a result of that, I gave my heart to Jesus. So even if you cut each part of my body, you're not able to separate Jesus from me. After that, because of all those pressures, they released us.
What is your message now that you're outside of Iran?
I always encourage people and tell them that we need to be bold. We need to share the message of salvation with everyone. It doesn't matter what kind of job you have, whatever you do, there is always a way to share your faith with people. And also, as Jesus in Bible says, that if you wanted to follow me, you need to deny yourself and pick your cross and follow me every day. I tell people that we need to know as Christians, the moment we say yes to Jesus, it's not about us, it's about him.
And explain maybe to those that don't know, have they set like a 25-year goal to destroy Israel?
They openly talk about it. And just, hey, look at what they are doing to their own people. When they are doing to their own people these kind of things, do you think they will have sympathy for people of Israel? Never. So of course they are serious about it. That's my point, to tell people, to wake up people that, hey, these are not rational people. These are not normal people. I was witness to execution of my friends. So when they tell something, they will do that. So the world needs to stand with people and support them at this time, because we can't let the Islamic Republic regime to achieve nuclear weapons.
If you want to watch all of Marzi's amazing interview, go to the Inside Israel page at cbnnews.com or to Jerusalem Dateline's Facebook page. Up next, Iran may be Israel's biggest enemy, but it wasn't always that way. Marzi shares the true history between the Jewish and Persian people and her hopes for Iran's future. Thank you for watching Jerusalem Dateline. We're committed to providing you with unbiased reporting from the Holy Land. Through weekly broadcasts, podcasts, and online media, our vision is to reach millions around the globe with the true story of what's happening in Israel and the Middle East, all from a biblical and prophetic perspective. This is a big vision and is only made possible by the generous support of people like you.
Call us toll-free at 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com/Jerusalem Dateline and make a donation that will help spread the light of truth about Israel throughout the world.
In this second excerpt from her interview with us, Marzi shares the true history between the Jewish and Persian people and her hopes for Iran's future. Arzi, a lot of people may not realize that Israel and Iran, or Persia, ancient Persia, have really had a connection that goes back thousands of years. How would you describe that?
Yeah, unfortunately, since 1979, the Islamic Republic regime tried to undermine and hide the history of friendship that Iranians had with people of Israel. And look at, as you mentioned, when you read the history, you see that the first king of Persian king, King Cyrus, in his first reign, he supported Jewish people. Mm-hmm. Jewish people were in captivity for about 70 years under Nebuchadnezzar, but King Cyrus allowed them to go back to Jerusalem and to build their city. And not only allow them to go back, release them from the captivity, but also return all their vessels that was taken from them. He allowed them to build their honor, their dignity. And then King Cyrus, he helped Jewish people to build their second temple. And Queen Esther in Bible, we see that she was an amazing queen that she revealed the plot with Haman, and she talked to the king Xerxes and stopped the genocide of Jewish people. And these amazing people, all their graves are in Iran, like Queen Esther, King Cyrus, and Mordecai. But majority of Iranian people have no idea about this. They don't know the history because the Islamic Republic regime doesn't want the people to know the truth, the friendship, the shared values that we had. And I was thinking, why was that? Why all those kings always supported Jewish people? And I felt because they understood that Jewish people are chosen by God. These are chosen people of God, and they respected that. They respected their God. And that's why, that's the reason I tell that I, as a Christian, I love Israel, and I stand and support Israel.
Again, to watch Marzi's full interview, go to the Inside Israel page at cbnnews.com. Well, that's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And you can also access CBN content through our CBN News and other CBN apps. And don't forget to sign up for our email blast so you can continue to receive all of our exciting CBN content. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.